All set to go. I think we've got our quorum. So there are two public meetings going on. So first we'll announce the public meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. So welcome all members of the public and other boards to the Milton Conservation Commission meeting of 28th of July, 2026. We really have one issue on our agenda this evening, and that is to discuss the Park Department proposal, not as a vote, but rather informational purposes only at this juncture. As a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves for the record, and so the public is aware this is being recorded. It is a public meeting. We invite comments, questions, everything from members of the public, but we do ask that you identify yourself for the record purposes. And again, as a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves. Can I go across the screen? Steve?
Steve Ivas, conservation agent.
All right, I'm just reading across the screen. John Kiernan, Conservation. Philip?
Philip Driscoll, Conservation Clerk.
Hans?
Hans Van Lingen, Commission Member.
Charlie?
First Commission Member.
Tom Palmer?
Tom Palmer, Commission Member.
Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy Garpo, one of the commissioners.
Arthur?
Arthur Doyle, member.
And we've got everybody. Thank you. Rob, or somebody from the Park Department, you want to open your
Carolyn is now chair, so I don't know if you...
All right, Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. Carolyn Cahill, Chair of the Park Commissioners. Rob Levash next.
Yeah, Rob Levash, member.
And Steve.
Steve Novak, member, Park Commissioner.
Kevin Chisholm.
Kevin Chisholm, Park Director.
All right, good. And I still don't know who Molly the note taker is, but welcome, Molly. So, Rob, do you want to make a presentation? Our agenda item is really the Flatley Field issue.
Yeah, sure. So I at first would just like to thank the board for having us this evening. What I do want to do is introduce you to our tie and bond consultant who has been doing our recreational master plan. I'd like to turn it over to Ryan, who's our PM on the project, to share a presentation with you folks, to just kind of share what we've been doing, as well as talk about the main agenda point, which is Flatley Field, as well as Ali Koch, as well as is here from Tie and Bond as well. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Rob. Excuse me. I'm going to try and share screen with everybody. Let's see. I probably need to move this over here. I'm going to work this out first. So now if I go to Zoom, share screen.
Steve, if you're the host, you may have to share your screen.
I sent
a request.
Steve.
He sent a request and I, quote unquote, allowed him to do it.
Good.
Thank you, Steve. I think you should be looking at a large screen that says Tie and Bond, Partnership with Purpose, Milton Recreational Master Plan. Is that fair, guys?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. So just a little bit about what we've been doing with the Parks Commission. Parks Commission has given us an opportunity to help them with this recreational master plan. During this time, we're trying to determine, or help the Parks Commission determine, what do they need for additional facilities? Where are there shortfalls for the community? Where is the community being underserved or maybe overserved? Where do they have too many facilities? And so to get there, we've assessed existing parks and fields and courts and supporting amenities. We did an initial assessment in the fall of 2025. We went out to the Parks Commission. We looked at each one of the facilities. We graded them ourselves, kind of walked through what's being done at each facility with Kevin. Everyone was nice enough to kind of give their ins and outs of what's being played there and what's happening there on a seasonal basis. After we did that, we spent some time reaching out to the community. We did surveys and some public meetings to kind of discuss what the community saw as needs and shortfalls within the recreational programming. It's kind of as a reminder, the town has an open space and parks plan that's being worked on. This master plan was more focused on athletic recreational facilities, either passive athletic facilities or active recreational facilities. After we were able to talk to the community from a survey perspective and public reach out, we've talked to individual coaches and community members that help coach different leagues within the community. And that really helped us kind of understand where the gaps are and what issues each individual user group is facing with the facilities. And then we worked with the Parks Commission. Once we were able to identify where the shortfalls are with the field demand, we were able to provide some conceptual layouts and planning level cost information to kind of help the Parks Commission decide how they may want to move forward. And we're kind of, I'd say, in a draft portion of that, kind of talking through what our options are with the Parks Commission and kind of shooting ideas back and forth at the moment. If at any point during this presentation somebody has a question, wants to stop me, wants to add something, if you're from the Parks Commission, because I've forgotten to talk about something we've talked about over the last year, by any means, say something, speak out, don't feel like you're interrupting me. From Ty and Bond's assessment of the facility, generally what we saw was that the recreational facilities that are from the town are right on par condition-wise with what we would expect for recreational fields for a community. They're not perfect. They're not collegiate level. They're not even what I'd say high school level are. They're on par for recreational facilities. Usually the problem with recreational facilities is, one, they're way overplayed, and two, there's limited maintenance staff to kind of keep up with the number of fields that are there. And so you have kind of very typical issues with them. Planarity issues, some of the grading may have gotten awful over the years. Athletes dig their cleats in certain places and create an unsafe condition. Natural turf showing signs of degradation. This is a telltale sign to us that the fields are being overplayed if we can tell where wear spots are in the fields. And there seem to be inconsistent areas. For instance, like if football is being played on a field, you're going to find wear spots down the center of the field. If soccer is being played, you're going to see at the goalie mouths and along the sideline of the fields where you're seeing degradation. And then we saw things like minor safety improvements, fencing a little bit out of line, tripping hazards, small things like that. One of our other big takeaways from our field assessments was supporting amenities are lacking. Some of the supporting amenities have been aged out, whether that's been dugouts or we haven't updated bathroom facilities, water drinking, really popular now is water bottle filling stations at playgrounds. Some of those supporting amenities are lacking at this point. And then limited availability of athletic lighting. There's very few places in the community that have athletic lighting that allow user groups to play into the night, which can create scheduling issues. It can also create a limited availability for a community to make up games if there's been a rain event, like, I don't know, some of you may be facing today, or maybe you're going to get it tomorrow, but it's pouring here at the moment. And so when you have that rain out event, if you don't have lighting, you have no capacity to expand your usage in a given day to kind of make up games or make up practices. One of the really big selling points to me, and to Kevin's kind of credit there was irrigation at the majority of the facilities, which is kind of rare for community fields. You don't often see that level of irrigation being provided across all the facilities. Field conditioning issues we heard from users was issues with pet feces. This isn't uncommon at community level fields, but something I think we're talking about with the Parks Commission, how they could address maybe providing dog parks or providing designated areas to walk dogs. But oftentimes users come out to the facilities and there's, pet feces in the facilities. They got to clean it up before the kids can play. One of the comments we got was municipally owned facilities are not quite as nicely maintained as private facilities. Drainage issues, whether that be from planarity or just poorly draining soils. As soils become compact when they're overplayed, they're less likely to drain quickly. And that results in an ability to play after a rain event. And then they agree that there's degraded surface or lack of turf coverage in certain fields during certain times of the year. This slide is a bit redundant, but this came from a survey that we did. We had sent out a community-wide survey that went to, I think, got 1,300 respondents. The next 4 or 5 slides are going to be some key slides we picked from that survey presentation we did. But what we heard in the survey from not from the coaches user group, but from the public was poor field conditions, including uneven surfaces, mud, flooding, and lack of grass coverage, limited amenities, which included parking, lack of restrooms and insufficient shade, and then safety concerns due to poor field maintenance. This also was a slide from the 1,300 respondents from the survey. As you can see, this slide talks about what are the most frequently used parks. Some of the top parks included Andrews Parks, Cunningham Park, Kelly Field, and Flatley Field. with 38% of the respondents playing at Flatley Field. I would say that, Andrews Parks, Kelly Field, and Cunningham Park are some of the bigger parks with the most amenities at them. And so Flatley, and then Milton County and Turner's Pond are some other notes. You'll note that the blue bar graphs there are private entities, while the orange bar graphs there are town-owned parcels that have recreational facilities at them. Also from our respondents, what were the number one locations they wanted to see improvements? Flatley Fields was the leader at 38%. Kelly Field was third at 31%, and Lower Guile was the second highest at 34%. And obviously the public is aware that there's a potential for a project there that just hasn't taken off at this moment.
Really quick, you're including Houghton Pond as a town-owned?
I think we said it wasn't privately owned because it's government owned, and so you're right in saying that's not a town-owned parcel; it's a state-owned parcel. We were just, I think we broke it out from privately owned and maintained to kind of understand who had the ability to schedule it.
Okay.
We also asked a number of questions about what the community would support for facilities. And I'm kind of blocked here, sorry. Support for additional fields. 80% of the respondents were in support for additional fields being added. The 82% were in support for the town acquiring fields. And the way this was phrased was acquiring land for more fields. And then 82% of the public was in support for additional fields, even with increased staffing needs. So it was good to see like the community's in support of adding more fields, which match some of our observations about field condition when I talk about the fields being overused and degraded from a natural turf standpoint. Preferred addition to Milton recreational fields. Again, this is from the 1,300 respondents. 61% of them said they'd like to see multi-purpose rectangular fields. And then passive activities was the second highest, with baseball and softball being located at 16% and 13% of the fields. I guess another notable outcome there was 7.5% of the public didn't think they needed to add any more fields. And so a little bit before I move on to this inventory of fields, and you can see here, Hans, that we've got Houghton Pond listed as state or high school category versus being town-owned. What we kind of notice from the fields, and this is very typical for communities, is when you have an inventory of natural turf fields and you have such a robust athletic recreational program that the town has, it's very easy for fields to get overplayed. And typically the way we try to combat that with athletic facilities is, one, you have more fields than you actually need to play on, and you give athletic fields time to rest, and you move the user groups over to another facility, or you provide synthetic turf, which doesn't really care how much you play at it. It will hold up. It really degrades from sun exposure. So those are the two ways we can address natural turf fields that look overplayed. Just kind of from an inventory perspective, because we wanted everyone to kind of like understand where the field inventory lies within the community. We have 7 multi-purpose rectangular fields within the community that currently serve the recreational program. I want to note that there's additional rectangular fields within the community that currently don't serve the community. For example, there's fields at Curry College that are not currently being used. When we polled the group, a number of the respondents, no one said they're currently playing events at Curry College. There is folks playing at Milton Academy Field Hockey Field, and I think there's additional rectangular fields at Milton Academy, but they're not being played on by the recreational group at the moment. So this is really just a list of the fields that are available as far as we understand to the community. So you have 7 multi-purpose rectangular fields within the community. You have 3 90-foot baseball diamonds, and we've listed where those are located. You've got 7 60-foot baseball diamonds. You've got 6 60-foot softball diamonds. And then you've got one T-ball field at Andrews Parks, 4 basketball courts, 2 at Andrews Park and 2 at the high school, and a total of 9 tennis pickleball courts. I should note that I think there's another basketball court in the making, Rob, right? There's one being right over the town hall, but it's not up and running at the moment.
Correct.
Where is Brooks Field on here?
Brooks Field is not on here because we're looking at this from the recreational group. And so our understanding is there's very limited capacity beyond the high school to serve the recreational user groups. And so we've not included that in the analysis. We've had, I think it's don't hold me to this, I think it's the women's lacrosse group or youth lacrosse group that gets to play on that field at sometimes, but it's really kind of rare that they get their ability to get limited in. And so we've not included that in our assessment.
Okay, although it's a little misleading to say there's an inventory of the fields where some fields are left out.
We're just trying to say what serves the recreational community versus what serves there's fields that serve the high school, there's fields that serve Milton Academy, there's private fields, there's more fields, they just don't serve the recreational group.
Okay.
Ryan, can I ask a question on?
Of course you can. Please
do you or does anyone consider Milton Academy, Curry College in terms of renting fields?
Yeah, Milton Academy, they are currently renting fields at that college at the moment. What I will say is that each one of those user groups already has their own field demand. And so access to those facilities, based on the feedback we've gotten from the coaches, has been with its own constraints to it. For example, the field hockey group rents Milton Academy field. They can only play on a very limited window in Saturday and Sunday. And the times they have to be off in the field and the times they're allowed on the field really kind of limit the program that they can build there. While they're very grateful for the opportunity to be there, right? Because it's a great facility and it's worked out for them. The ability to expand upon what they currently have has kind of not been able to be developed any further. Is that fair?
Sure. And Curry is said no?
Curry has been in the past at opportunity, but my understanding is currently, because of their programming, they don't have much ability to take on additional users at their facilities at the moment. But in the past, they have allowed community to play there.
This past spring, there was kind of a pilot opportunity.
Ryan, this spring, Milton Youth Soccer did use the field at Curry. Yep.
And how did that go, guys?
50-50. The first time we tried to have a game there, I'm a soccer coach. There was confusion about the availability of the field. We had to reschedule at the last minute. The second time, there was a field available. And it went okay.
Okay. And do we think that's going to develop more?
I think that depends on Kevin.
We hope. We went to a meeting with them and hopefully partner with them more in the future.
Okay.
Also, I just want to add, the pilot committee in town has added a Park and Rec commissioner to that board so that we can hopefully be part of those conversations too.
Good.
Great. So earlier you heard me mention we had a bunch of conversations with all the coaches and talk about what they needed. Those conversations were anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour long. And were wide ranging in conversations depending on who I was talking to. Tried to sum it up in a slide to not bore everybody with the details. But what they would like the main points I took out of it is they'd like improved maintenance on the facilities. They'd like more opportunity to practice. Kind of the biggest takeaway I took out of those conversations was the number of coaches that have to really limit practice with the kids or cancel it altogether once game season happens because there's not availability of field space for them to play. And then the ability to add lighting to the facilities was kind of the second biggest takeaway I took out of that. I had coaches tell me during their conversations that, they practice as they're preseason and the kids get 1 or 2 practices per week. leading up to games, and then once games start, practices have to stop altogether. Otherwise, they have no ability to play games. And especially if there's any weather that happens in a week, all practices get canceled right away. It can be pretty difficult for them. And what they're finding, and I think I put this on another slide, but I'm going to say it now, what they're finding is that as kids mature through the age ranges in their different user groups, because they're falling behind in practice, they're either transitioning to a travel ball team or they're dropping out of the sport rather than staying in the rec league. So just kind of some other more detailed notes. Poor drainage is causing them to cancel games and practices long after the rain stops. One of the things we tried to talk about is, the town resources are, of course, limited. So like, what other opportunities are your user groups taking to kind of get a practice in? Maybe it's not on a game day field and maybe it's not the perfect situation, but could they do ground ball practice in what we used to call in my school or my community a cow flop field? It was like had no care taking care of it. It was just mowed. We're finding that the coaches are finding like the little corners of facilities to play practice or stretch or get half a practice in before the field opens up. And so we do feel like the coaches are trying to max out the space and haven't, not just asking for a full field space. And you might see my note down here: out of town options for private have proven to be difficult to depend on, expensive, and have many restrictions on time. One of the notes I think we've received from some of the coaches is the amount of money they spend on renting space outside is pretty significant. And if there was an opportunity for them to play in the town fields, that money could go towards maintaining or improving town facilities rather than going towards private facilities. A little bit about conclusions. Existing system is operating at or above capacity, especially for multi-purpose rectangular fields. Natural turf fields have no recovery time and have limited ability to be rotated. Another one of the things you can do for a rectangular field, earlier you heard me talk about having wear spots that are common for different field play. If you're able to rotate a field, you're able to on overlap where those wear spots have, and you give the field a little bit of time to recover. But because of how the facilities have been built over the years, there's not much of the like wide open space to rotate fields like there is at like maybe Flatley has the ability to rotate field space. Additional land versus synthetic turf. One of the common themes we talked about earlier was you can either add land or you can add turf in order to improve field inventory. Well, if you replace a natural turf multi-purpose rectangular field with synthetic, it usually adds about +2 fields as long as you add lights to it. So we say about 200 uses per year on a natural turf field seem appropriate. We normally would just find a use on a natural turf field as 2 hours of play throughout the day by a team or multiple teams on that facility. If you add synthetic turf with lights, you're able to get 600 uses on that field, and that's not a factor of the turf will break down. That's a factor of like hours in the day in school being a limiting factor for that. So we usually say about 600 to 700 uses can happen on a synthetic turf field. So that's like adding 2 fields, or you can add land and you can add additional multi-purpose rectangular fields. Typical multi-purpose rectangular soccer field is about 90,000 square feet, which is about 2 acres of land. And that does not include amenities for parking, restrooms, facilities, or anything like that. Our identified needs after talking to the coaches and understanding the scheduling constraints were that the town is short about 3 to 4 multi-purpose rectangular fields and about 2 to 3 additional 60-foot baseball softball diamonds. The town also is in need of walking trails, athletic lighting, and more passive recreational opportunities. I would say during the survey portion, the passive community was very vocal in saying, they'd like to see more opportunities for them to get out and enjoy the parks, other than just athletic fields. And we had a number of pickleball users come out and ask for dedicated courts during that process. Is there any questions about that slide?
As well as the fitness court as well, Ryan.
Yes, thank you.
Just really quick.
Pickleball or recreation is passive? Is pickleball a passive recreation?
I find it in between. I actually, definitionally, I'd say no, it's active. I would say some people are playing it passively and some people are playing it actively.
That's a real conundrum.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I saw another question there.
Yeah, sorry. Just really quick, there's a backstop at Flatley since this talk. Is that included in that inventory or no?
We did not include that backstop in this analysis because, to my knowledge, nobody's
No,
playing baseball.
No
over
one
there in the
really
field.
no one uses that, Hans,
Okay.
as a baseball,
Yeah.
kind of baseball softball facility. That backstop is there, but no one uses it.
I don't even think there's bases over there, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
I think it's just left there. I mean, Kevin, you might have more insight, but I don't even think we use, nothing happens there, right?
No, that was from when Flatley had the nursing home there, and that was the employees that played softball there after work.
Okay. So it hasn't been used in a
No.
long time.
Not at all.
Okay.
Conceptual plan summary. Our idea today is not to go through every one of the conceptual plans that we've kind of considered with the Parks Commission. We're going to focus on Flatley Field, but kind of let the Conservation Commission understand of the different ideas we've talked about. Flatley Field has been kind of the largest centerpiece to what we've talked about for opportunities to expand athletic facilities there. But Milton High School, we looked at making revisions to Middle Guile. But unfortunately, every which way we placed the facilities at Middle Guile, we couldn't add field space. It's pretty maximized as it is. We could take away a baseball field and add a rectangular field, but what we've learned is that the baseball folks really would like the 3 90-foot diamonds in the community, and it really couldn't fit all 3 in there. It wouldn't be awkward, and you wouldn't have any permanent fencing there. Additionally, I think the Parks Commission has already started to spend money on some of those facilities there. I think there's been recent athletic lighting updates done there, and there's dugouts to happen this year, Rob, or next year, sorry.
Yeah.
We looked at Andrews Park, and I think Andrews Park is part of this solution, but we're preserving existing fields, baseball and softball fields. We're replacing dugouts, completely replacing the natural turf soccer field, which I think is under review for CPA funding at the moment. Adding walking path, fitness stations, and parking lot improvements, because one of the biggest survey things we heard was that the parking at Andrews Park is under parked at the moment. And I think based on our evaluation, we agree with that statement. We also looked at Pierce Middle School. Pierce Middle School is currently being used by flag football teams, but we were trying to see if we could expand usage over there at all by adding a larger field or a more developed complex there. Unfortunately, due to the size and the parcel constraints, there's not much ability to do anything with that space additionally. And then we looked at Kelly Field. We played with all different kinds of shaped fields and rotations to try and get more out of Kelly Field. Unfortunately, due to the existing geometry and kind of some of the hardscape features that are around the field space, there's not much ability to expand there. It's laid out pretty well for what it is at the moment. And without blowing everything up and starting over, which I don't think anybody wants to take on at the moment, that facility doesn't really have much ability to expand upon its current usage.
What about Houghton's?
So back to Houghton State.
Houghton's a state park.
Understood, but I mean, it's a huge area, and
it's a huge area. But I think for this study, because we can only control the land that we own or is town owned, so that was our focus on that. And just some of the feedback from folks that have used the Houghton's Pond as well is there's been many issues. I mean, Steve, who's on, can attest to that for baseball. Like, we can't bring equipment boxes there. We've had major issues with like painting lines there for soccer fields. So there's been, early on in the presentation that Ryan said, like, there's just been issues with Houghton's Pond.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very few actually said they use Houghton's Pond regularly. They said, like, normally they'll say, we got pushed over to Houghton's Pond because something was happening at that field. But the minute they could come back, they came back.
Yeah, I've noticed other towns don't have the same issues. And I don't know if it's specific to the Blue Hills or if it's so other DCR properties. I mean, are widely used by other towns. It seems that, like I said, I don't know if it's something specific to the to whoever operates Houghton's.
Could be.
Bob, anything I'm missing from like what we evaluated for opportunities? I know we looked at a small church parcel St.
Right.
Mary's. Is there any opportunity to like expand usage there, even though it was private? There was not much opportunity
No.
there. Fields undersized.
No, I mean, I think the overall piece here is that we really did look through all these other pieces. So it led us to Flatley, where really it's open, and there was a lot of things that we could potentially do there, and that's what we want to share with you today. And obviously, this is kind of a conversation as we kind of move forward.
I'm gonna skip this slide because I think we've kind of have priorities, how we've prioritized, what we could do. Our first priority is expand field capacity. You can do that by advancing synthetic turf strategy, only because that allows you to bring a field on right away, as compared to pursuing additional land, which usually that process takes time. You can improve existing natural turf so that it plays better. 4, we could enhance and support amenities. 5, pursue land and funding. And then 6, continue community engagement to understand how each one of these
I think one other important note here, Ryan, that we didn't potentially say was we also looked at not only our existing parks, but we looked at land that was owned by the Parks Commission as well, which we know that there was land over by the town dump. That was a potential parcel, but we know that there's a lot of remediation to be had over there. It's also sandwiched between conservation land, which just made the issue that much harder to like develop into fields. I'd say that's pretty accurate, right, Ryan? Like we walked the field, you looked at some layouts. We basically deemed like it's not even worthy land for us to even use for any type of recreational fields. Now, granted, maybe in the future you could do paths and whatever, but I don't think for field usage we could really utilize that. And then I think there was another couple parcels that we also looked at, one over by Brush Hill Road. So we did also look at other spaces. And at the end of the day, I think the general principle here is that while people might be in real support of getting other land, we all live in Milton, most of us on the call, and there's not readily available land for sale, and it's very expensive land if you were even to get it. And so for the park land that's owned by the parks, we're kind of sandwiched in between making some hard decisions. So
yeah, the only other piece about that land that was by the dump was the topography across it. Would have been like a crazy earthwork project to get a 2-acre flat piece of land anywhere.
There's a lot of drop off down into like that goes out to Randolph. Yeah,
it would be really hard to develop that parcel. I don't want to say impossible, but really expensive.
It would be expensive. Yeah.
So that led us to Flatley. And we've kind of been playing with this layout over the last couple of weeks, or I'd say last couple of months. The main improvements here that we're showing is an addition of a synthetic turf field that's lighted. This synthetic turf field could be played for soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, youth soccer, or full-size soccer. You could play flag football here. You could play any sport on this size field that plays on a multi-purpose rectangular field. Other than high school football. It's not long enough for high school football. Doesn't mean we couldn't change it. This is just one conceptual layout, but right now, high school football wouldn't play here. The parking lot is a 60 spot parking lot. It's pervious in land area. We've kind of taken a shot at the conceptual layout for it. One of the feedback points we got for this layout was that there's some issues with the existing parking lot that has about 60 spaces on it in the northeast corner here. And so they said, could we consider an optional additional driveway? We're just showing that conceptually. We haven't talked to anybody about that or the legality of it, but that may help mitigate some traffic concerns. We're showing a youth playground. This has got 2 sizes on it currently. There's a 2 to 5 playground here and a 5 to 12. We're showing walking trails throughout the facility. Most of this walking trail already exists, but we're trying to add continuity between all the different uses. We've got 2 natural turf youth fields outside of the rectangular field. The way youth soccer has played on this facility, and mostly this facility has been used by youth soccer in the past couple of years, is my understanding, is that there's natural turf fields being kind of like youth fields all over the place. The idea here would be that we'd have natural turf fields, but these fields could be played on by anybody. There's a 75 by 105 field just to the north of the rectangular synthetic turf field, and then to the west of that field, there's another 135 by 210 field. So it's a youth level field. We've also added pickleball courts. As I had mentioned, we've got a lot of feedback from the pickleball folks that they want a dedicated field or court space. Currently, I think they have nets that they put up at the existing tennis court facilities, but that kind of creates an issue for them. And so they were looking for dedicated court space, and so we're providing 2 pickleball courts here. This facility would be, a kind of a state-of-the-art facility in comparison to some of the other facilities that the town has. Everything would be updated. There'd be full electric there. The playground would have full rubber surfacing. You're talking about big play structures and swings and spinning devices inside the facility. We're currently showing some minor landscaping in this image. Obviously, I think, Rob, you had mentioned earlier that you'd want to up the landscaping on the site. Certainly, I think, we would want to add some trees and add some shade. Again, one of the feedback items we got from the community was they want to see shade out on their sites. And so I think we'd want to add additional landscaping. And I think the rendering that I have after this to show the group is kind of shows some more of that vegetation on site. But any questions, or Rob, anything you want to add about what we're showing at Flatley and what your concerns or thoughts might be?
No, I think that was just the only thing that I would hit. I keep referencing for anybody who's close to town, Kincaid Field, which is in Quincy, is a field that also has a synthetic turf field, but a lot of landscaping, a lot of there's basketball, there's playgrounds, there's physical activity. I think that's a good reference, I think, of what we're trying to do here. And then obviously, trying to make this, do a lot for the town passively as well as with recreation for the different sports that are in town, as well as any recreational users and the senior home that's here. I think, a lot of folks that are residents here can also use this as a amenity in the community as well. So I think it's really, in our view, it's really like an opportunity, the biggest land area in town to have an opportunity to do something here. And so that's it. And I think we're, at this point ready to open up, for conversations and questions.
Sure. I think there are several points of interest to place the enhancement of these fields in context. The first one is that, the Conservation Commission, I think, had 8, may have been 7 hearings on the Lower Guile Road regarding the artificial turf. We did issue the permit, but it was a split vote. It went to DEP. They issued a superseding order allowing the permit to go forward. The neighborhood opposition group took it to an appeal at the OADR, which is the Office of Alternative Dispute Resolution. And just recently, within the last month or so, the OADR issued a very, I thought, comprehensive and thorough 44-page opinion on that, addressing all the concerns in terms of PFAS and PFOs and nanoparticles of plastic and our filtration system. And it really addressed the 2 biggest issues for the Conservation Commission. One was the heat of the water coming off of the artificial turf and how to make sure it's cooled before it gets back into any kind of a navigable stream. And here, the sensitivity is that this is an ACEC area of critical environmental concern. I'm sorry, area of critical environmental concern. And that by itself, just by definition, involves another layer of review. That's a MEPA review. after the Conservation Commission makes a determination of the Wetlands Protection Act criteria. So it is a sensitive area. We're near Paul's Bridge. And I don't know where the line goes, but I believe this area that we're looking at right now is within the ACEC. So we just have to be sensitive to that, and that these other issues, including making sure that there's no contamination going into the nearby Neponset River. And we make sure that the water coming off the field, because it is going to be heated during the summer, that it cools down before it enters the Neponset River. And the river is far enough away that I'm sure it can be done because we've done it at Guile Road. But those are going to be the issues. And then to place in context those issues that we need to address, we have the conservation restriction. And Caroline and the Parks Commission, you should be aware that all commission members have received a copy of Tom Flatley's conservation restriction. And it does address issues like putting anything on top of the currently existing fields, and the desire that meaning the whole Flatley Field complex, be used for recreational purposes. And Tom he had enough foresight to say, I want to make sure that this is good for the use of the kids to play, football, soccer, lacrosse, whatever. He named a bunch of them, and we all have a copy of the CR before us. So those are the issues that we have to address, or we will have to address if you come in with a proposal. For instance, if you came in with this as a notice of intent, you'd like to do this, those are the questions that we would be asking, and that is, how do you ensure that the drainage from the fields is going to be clean before it hits the Neponset? How do we ensure that it will be ambient temperature, that it's not heated? Because the Neponset part of it is cold water fisheries. So that's really one of our concerns. And I think it can be done, and it can probably be done pretty efficiently. That is, make sure that the discharge water is clean and make sure it's cool before it hits the waterway. But those would be the questions that we would be asking. So therefore, the question becomes right now, tonight, is how do we address the CR? Can this be done? I actually think it can be, but I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the limitations. And as we read the restriction itself, there are some limitations. And so my first question is the 60 parking lot area, is that the same that currently exists? And I note that you said pervious, which is music to our ears, to make sure that the parking area is pervious. But is that the same parking space, or is that to be added?
There's 60 up here.
Yep.
And then we've added an additional 60 parking spaces. And the reason we've taken this approach is it's my understanding that this 60 parking spaces isn't under the town's control. And so while they're there, they're not guaranteed access to this parking in perpetuity. And so we wanted a 60 parking spaces down here. That, in combination with the fact that the facility is not as near as some of the other ones are to like community development, it's way less likely people are going to be biking out to this facility than some of the other ones. We recognize people are going to have to drive out to this facility.
The existing parking also floods. There's drainage issue. There's drainage issues there as well. And it abuts right on a well.
Yeah, drainage is a big deal for us. But again, I think it was done at Lower Guile Road, and I think it can probably be done here, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, but those will be the detailed questions that you'll get. Where does the water go?
Sure.
And what's the condition of the water, and what's the temperature of the water? And I know we're not there yet. It's just
No, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
I promise next time we'll come with answers for some of those things.
The good news is Time Bond is the right people to be giving us that next level of detail.
So
The question I have is, as far as the CR, is there anything about the proposed development that we're currently showing that we need to rethink or reconsider or maybe take a different approach to? One of the questions I had is the lights that are being shown at this facility, is that something, from a CR perspective, that is possible?
Well,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Morrison, have you read the CR?
I have not read the CR at this moment, no.
pretty
To
prescriptive.
me, I've read it. Some of the other members are, and to me, it's really like a threshold consideration of this project because it's very explicit about what's allowed on the site. And I'm quoting from it here, I believe it said, no temporary or permanent structures shall be placed on the site. So that seems to me a very difficult hurdle to get over. It does seem like it's hard to argue that a parking lot or a plastic field are not structures. So I could bring it up on my screen if people want to look at it. We all looked at it. Something else it says is that on the third page that Milton Conservation Commission shall be solely responsible for enforcing the restriction. So it really puts a burden right on us. So that's sort of a threshold consideration for me. As a commissioner, I'm told by the restriction not to allow any temporary or permanent structures. So aren't I sort of over a barrel here?
Tom, let me, and you're correct in bringing that up because we're all reading it. But if you look at number, letter B, Roman numeral 1B, it says no soil, loam, peat, gravel, sand, rock, landfill, or other mineral substance shall be placed, stored, or dumped thereon. Right, as I understand it right now, there are some drainage issues that forget about the artificial turf. Just leave it as soil, grass field. It appears that to correct some of the drainage problems on the existing grass field, it would require a change in elevation, which by itself would require some soils to be placed on top of it. Now, as a strict constructionist, you could say, well, it says no soil. But I wonder if just the normal maintenance of a grass field would fit within the original intent of the donor, Tom Flatley, as to whether or not his intent was to keep the field playable. And if that would require changing the elevation to create a better drainage runoff, would that fit within our obligation to stay within the conservation restriction? So what I'm suggesting is there's a little bit of wiggle room here to stay within the intent of the donor.
Yeah, I was talking about A. You're talking about B. A is the provision that says no temporary or permanent structures. B refers to fill. And I agree with you that considering that this has been a town field for a long, long time, been used for that purpose, simply to try to improve the existing fields by adding loam, that's a different proposition. I mean, it's more of a judgment call because that's not a temporary or permanent structure. Interestingly, you may have, if you read the whole restriction, and it's only 3 pages, it restricts the area to the residents and employees of the premises. And I assume that refers to the former hospital. But the premises are defined in the first part of the restriction. And I couldn't kind of scope them out to see if they included the fields and the hospital or just the fields. It's my impression that it was just the fields. So I would say that we've been in violation a long time by allowing people other than the residents of the hospital to play on the field. And I'm okay with that violation because it makes a lot of sense to invite the town to play there. It's a very good place to play. But
There's been a significant change, Tom, because the CR was written in 80, what is it, 82 or 80, 82?
signed
Yes.
by John Cronin
Yes.
and by Walter Timilton.
Yes. But keep in mind that at the time, Tom Flatley owned the land. So the fee was owned by the Flatley Company, which was not a company. It was he was a
Yes.
sole proprietor. So he owned the land. And he conveyed the conservation restriction. About 10 years later, he conveyed the land, not where the nursing home was, but the fields. He conveyed that to the town. So that's what's changed. So the ownership of the fields right now is in the town, as
Yeah,
well
and
as the conservation
right.
restriction.
Right. The restriction says that. It says the land is granted to the town, and the responsibility or obligation to enforce a restriction is turned over to us.
Yes. Yeah, I just said that because it may have an impact on, the employees of the at the time it was the nursing home.
When I went there the other day, it was yesterday actually. I walked the field, and the only two people I saw on the field other than me were two employees walking along the paved path on the north side, presumably going to the train at Reedville. It was very pleasant and nice then having it all to myself. I did notice that it did seem to be irrigated, as we heard before. And also it had these curious, what I would call teepee marks, like areas with no grass, nothing but bare dirt about the size of a teepee. I don't know.
Yeah. So
there weren't
so
many
I-
of those.
So I will say too, as maybe some of you know, maybe you don't. My wife is the president of Milton Soccer. She had a board meeting yesterday, and just anecdotally, the K-2 program director had mentioned Flatley and the poor conditions there. So your observation is very clear. Like the overuse of those fields have really left a lot of these fields in really poor condition currently. And the K-2 director said, I don't, they're hard surfaces. It's hard and unsafe for some of these kids to play on. So, I mean, I do think, at this point in where we are in the season in the summer is these fields were played on a ton in the spring, right? And so they were played, even if you rotate them, Ryan, right? I think they've been rotated so many times now that they're also, one thing that the board should understand is that they might be rotated, but every single piece of one of these is not getting rest time. And really, in order to make it, really good surface time is to let something rest. The programming that we currently have in town is so jammed right now currently that we just don't have any hope for resting for some of these fields. So this is basically what you get now at this point. And there is, to Tom's point, now is the time that you get some rest there, but it's also the summer.
It's dormant season for grass.
So it's dormant season for grass, right? It's also dormant season for sports, but just anecdotally, that's what I heard from this morning.
As you look at that slide, you'll see the corner in the upper left, the narrow corner up there. If you go there, you'll notice that area is bone dry. And it shows. It's doesn't have any green, but move out into the body of the fields, and they are green. And I thought it was very clever how the irrigation had been installed, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find any pop-up valves, or I really couldn't see how it was done. But it is done, and that field is green now.
Does the CR define structure at all for us?
No, and if you haven't seen it, I would say everybody has to look at it.
I mean, the commission has, I'm very well familiar with it. I think the Parks Commission is familiar with it. Ryan, we can send it to you.
Yep.
I think everyone, just so that you're on the phone, is Ryan's our consultant, right? He's here to do work. We're happy to share that information with you. But at the end of the day, it's really between, the town's commission to figure out how we can move past this and work through it.
Well, I agree with you, Robin. I would ask you, do you think you can make these changes and say that they're not structures? I mean, that's sort of what we have to do. If we want to go along with this, we're supposed to, according to our charge, we're not supposed to allow any temporary or permanent structures. It seems to me like a plastic field is more of a structure than a grass field, but maybe that's just my prejudice. They are both built. At any rate, that's the question I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think we wanted to present this to you, right? We know that there's a lot of conversation regarding turf and grass. What I would ask back out to the commission, maybe to you, Tom, is, I think as we went forward is like, listen, I think the grass and turf debate is, I would love to do like those 4 grass fields in town. But where does that happen? And I think what we've done with our rep master plan, and Ryan specifically, is to say, hey, let's look at all these other opportunities in town. What we're at right now is that our programming so surpasses what we currently have in facilities that the only solution, at least from Ryan and in Time Bond's view, is that we can solve our programming here. Now, listen, I think at the end of the day, if we just did grass here and we could go through on that piece, it won't solve our programming, right? And so we're then looking for additional land in town, which is going to be expensive. And I don't even know where it is, right? It's probably privately owned, how you figure that out. So I think that was the point of the master plan, was to really figure out how we solve for programming. And kind of figure where we are. I think as a, from a standpoint of like a discussion point, I think any of the stuff that's on the table is open for discussion. We want to work together with the town, the Conservation Commission, to identify how we would move, forward in a progressive manner to be within the, what Flatley wanted in the, his wishes when he gave over to the town. So for instance, like if the parking, we wanted to do a pervious, we would do a pervious surface. Any other surfaces we would try to identify. So I think that's kind of the manner that we're looking at from that.
I hear you. I'm just stuck at that first place, which is the explicit language of the restriction. It's not very long, and it's not vague either. So it sort of seems to define my role. And my role is not to solve the recreation problems. The CR says what my role is. And
Tom,
I'm looking at it. And,
Tom, let me ask you a question. Because there is a doctrine in law called the Cypre doctrine, where a court intervenes and interprets what the original intent of the grantor was or would be. It's kind of a speculative process, but it's recognized in law, and courts often do it. So when you look at it, it says no building, road, mobile home, sign, billboard, or other outdoor advertising display, wall, utility pole, tower, conduit lines, equipment, or fixtures, or any other temporary or permanent structure. How do you define structure? I don't know how you get to structure. I mean, if you're talking about a building, a mobile home, a tower, that's how I would define structure. And is a turf field then a structure? That would be what the court would be asked to define if we or the Parks Department were to ask for a Cypre interpretation. What?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, to me, a structure means something that's built. And you can contrast it with, if you go down further on in this restriction, it emphasizes the last paragraph. Restrictions are intended to maintain the premises in perpetuity, predominantly in their natural, scenic, and open condition. Now, natural speaks to the difference between a grass field and a plastic field, and open speaks to the difference between the plastic fields that now exist and grass fields, because all the plastic fields in town aren't open anymore. They're all fenced off. So if I'm trying to understand what I'm supposed to do here, I'm supposed to maintain natural, scenic, and open properties. And all I'm saying is this language seems to me very clear and limiting as well. So that's all I'm saying. And
John, really quick.
Yeah.
First of all, Carolyn has her hand up. She's had her hand up for a while.
I understand.
I guess that was going to be my question, is when there is something that's subjective, the way they're calling permanent structure, how is that typically solved with the Conservation Commission?
This is an interesting point.
Kind of new to us.
Is it town, like Milton Town Council, or is it beyond that? If anyone knows, and maybe we don't have those answers right now.
So,
well, we've not been asked to determine what is a structure in the past, so it is new to us. I think our first step would be to go to town council and ask. The Cypre doctrine is something that's done by a court, by a judge, not by us. So the first level of interpretation, I think, would go to us, but we'd certainly reach out to town council for advice in that area.
Okay, thank you.
John, I was going to make a very similar point. So given that you've already mentioned the ACEC, the other constraints, I mean, if the project is going into MIPA, that means that someone's going to look at it from the Article 97 lens to see if it triggers that as well, won't they? And maybe that's another question for council.
I don't, yeah, it would be a question for council, but I don't think we're changing the use. It's a recreational field. It stays a recreational field, whether it's grass or, a plastic overlay.
But John, you have experience with plastic fields in town. Would you agree that they're not as open as this field is now?
No, I have a different, and I was going to say something before, Tom, but I don't think open, if you're talking about a fence around it, that's an easy, don't put a fence up. If that would keep it open. I think of open as like open space, so that there's no building there. The sort of the classic structure there. It's open space, as it is now.
Yeah.
So whether it's soil
I get you.
Okay.
Steve, I think you had your hand up first before I did.
Sure, Ryan. I think this is a discussion for another time, but before we get ahead of ourselves in terms of who needs to discuss this, is there any precedent at this point relative to that document to go to the Flatley company now? Obviously, Tom Flatley's no longer with us, but to talk about with the heirs and who runs the Flatley company, if there is an interpretation that they would agree to before we went through some of these other hurdles as we think through that.
The simple answer is yes. Danny Flatley lives next door to me.
Obviously, I know I don't want to get into that. I think many of us know the Flatleys. So before we went to a lot of other hoops, it may behoove us to reconvene and think about, is there a conversation to be had down the road there with the Flatleys?
Sure. And that might be something that a court would ask if it got to the point of a Cypre doctrine analysis. But they're close and around and available.
I was wondering, the town, maybe the reason that Conservation Commission has never had to define structure before is because the town already has a definition for structure as part of their planning board code. And I was wondering if we thought that that definition in the planning board code applies or would have any applicability to that CR.
I guess one other question, I don't want to like jumble things here. In my mind, like, and the Concom may know this, at Peverly Park, we just put in a playground. I would define that as structure, right? That is a built surface. That's plastic surface that's underneath there that we're putting. So I'm just, it's not clear to me like what's structure, what's not structure, what's open space, what's not open space. I think we would need a little bit of guidance on some of that.
I agree that Peverly Park to me looks like a structure, and but on the other hand, I'm not aware there was any restriction that we're dealing with at Peverly Park as there is here.
But there was, I think, right? Originally there was, and then it went to town meeting, and then town meeting passed that park could be put in there. And that was all owned by Conservation Commission.
No, actually, it's pretty complicated, but it was not.
Was it? Okay.
It was general municipal purposes, and the town on the land swap initially agreed to give all 44.7 acres to the Conservation Commission, but we stopped that because it would trigger an Article 97 issue, because if it went from passive to active recreation. So we did a carve out. So 40 acres came to the Conservation Commission and 4 went to the Park Department just to avoid the 97 issue.
Okay.
But you're right that we need some guidance on that. My view is that the structure that you see there is the equipment, and that would constitute the structure. So the swings or the jungle gym or merry-go-round or whatever equipment has gone in there would be the structure. But again, I'm not weighing in on that from a legal perspective. I'd run to town council for that one.
The other interesting thing is, when did the backstop show up in comparison to the CR?
Where's the backstop on this plan?
So Tom, it would be right behind the
where the
they have
pickleball is on the plan.
To the left of that.
Right here.
So
right
between there and the other smaller grass field.
Right.
Where the cursor is moving now?
Correct.
Right there. Yeah.
I got you.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I mean, also what I would say is an irrigation system, that was put in, when this restriction was here, whether that, should have happened or not. I think it's just.
Can you describe the irrigation system here, how it works, or?
It's run by a well. We have a well there, and it doesn't take care of the whole field, but the majority of it. And that was put in before my time.
How is the water distributed? By subsurface drip lines?
By irrigation heads? Is that what you mean?
Or by sprinklers?
Yes, by sprinklers. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. That was funny when I was walking around. I didn't see any sprinklers. So
sometimes they're tricky to find. I struggle myself sometimes.
I agree. You could call that a structure and ask whether or not we should have approved it if we did.
Yeah, except if you keep reading that same paragraph, it says accepting only such, buildings, roads, utility poles. They repeat it as are required from time to time.
When
a little bit like the Texas two-step, 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
When the CR was written, were kids from town already playing there in 1982?
I don't remember playing there when I was a kid. I mean, teams. Town teams playing there.
Yeah. Well, my kids are now both over 30. they both played soccer there. From age, I don't know, like 5 to 10 or something. The age where everybody runs up and down chasing the ball. And there's lots of goals there now. They're like 8 goals scattered over the field, the movable goals.
I can't see because we're screen sharing, so I can't see everybody. So I don't know if there are any hands raised, but I'd like to hear from other commissioners, conservation commissioners, as to questions or comments. But I can't see you.
Mine's up, but I don't know how to get it back down, so bear with me.
Just press the raise hand, Ryan.
I see.
Then
It
it lowers
it.
it.
There we go. Thank
Yep.
you.
So not seeing Wendy. Do you have any comments, questions,
I'll
thoughts?
stop sharing too.
I don't have anything additional to add to the conversation, John. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Arthur,
I would just
you're still echoing, Arthur, and you've still got a second screen up.
I can't get it on. I can't get it down.
Okay. Notwithstanding the echo, did you have any questions or comments?
If it's not problematic, this is
Just speak slowly.
This is a paramount example to me of managing the commons, which is supposed to be very difficult, and that's what we're faced with. And we have to look at it in the context of time, definition, intent, maintenance, a whole host of other variables. That's a brief comment. So I'm comfortable with this discussion.
All right, thank you. We may have lost Charlie. He was on the road and he had an engagement. I think it started at 8:30, so we lost him. But he was present for most of the comments. Any other commissioners or Steve Ivers or Philip? Do you have any comments or questions?
Nope.
All right. Well, I guess, next step from our perspective, and I don't mean to cut off any discussion, Carolyn, this is your open meeting as well, comments or questions, but the next step for me would be to have a specific proposal in terms of a notice of intent. And once we see that, we might have to stop and pause for a minute and get town council involved, because I think Tom Palmer has raised some issues that we need some resolution on as to how we proceed and what is the scope of the restriction for us, and how do we best serve our mandate, both on the conservation restriction and on the Wetlands Protection Act. Because the questions that we're going to get are the, oops, that's my AI talking. I think the sooner the better to get town council involved in this. Because I think we all want to dot the I's and cross the T's. And it sounds like the Parks Commission has some pretty valid issues here that need to go forward to protect the youth of Milton, and we need to do it in the right fashion. So the sooner we get a notice of intent, the sooner we can get town council involved. And they can give us some advice as to what to expect also, not just from the DEP, yes, but MEPR itself is going to be taking a look at this. So there's a double need to dot the I's and cross the T's.
John, I would just add to that, and when I toured the site and also looked at aerials, it wasn't obvious to me that any part of the field is within 100 feet of a wetland. Might be, but didn't really see it.
Okay.
I was going to ask that same question. So has Ty and Bond done any preliminary flagging or buffer linear? I'm guessing that the only thing would be in is, outer 100 or even riparian zone.
We had not at this point done any flagging or anything out here. We'll pull up some state wetland mapping just to kind of like do a check for us when we'll update this plan for that. We were just kind of got into a conversation about where could we add 3 or 4 fields.
Exactly.
This is great. And then Rob's like, wait, I think there's a restriction. Let's go have a conversation before we get too far down this road.
Yeah, to be honest, everyone who's here, we didn't even know that this was under Conservation Commission, jurisdiction. So as we were going through, we just had no idea. Some of us who are here, that's kind of where we flagged it and said, oh, okay. I think we had to go back and see. By the way, in that open space and rec plan, under the committee's plan, that is labeled under as Parks and Rec, by the way, under the committee's jurisdiction. So that was labeled wrong. Obviously, it's been used like that for years, but that's where we kind of netted out why we wanted to have the conversation with you guys. I think we very much appreciate having the conversation, showing you kind of what we've been up to and everything.
Yeah, and I just want to share, I think what's actually fantastic is basically whoever laid out all of our fields did a pretty fantastic job. It's not like we're looking at any of our parcels saying, oh my gosh, if they had put the softball over here, we could fit 2 more soccer fields. Whoever laid out all of our, playing fields over the years did a fantastic job in doing so, that we really don't need to do much on that front. And, obviously this has kind of led us to the Flatley space that looks like, we might be able to solve something, obviously, if this all is able to kind of work out.
Good. From a historic perspective, Hans, you asked about the flagging. Do you remember when, just probably 5 years ago, we were on Brush Hill Road, right at the entrance to the skilled nursing facility, and the stone wall had been knocked down? We had a joint meeting with the Historic Commission there. I think there was some flagging across the street.
Yes.
Because our jurisdiction was triggered. So that's actually on the south side of this. I don't know if it's within 100 feet or not. It's nearby. And on the north side, I have no idea how far the Neponset is.
That would be over here.
Wait a minute, I can't see your cursor.
It would be Kennedy Brook on the north side, which is sort of channelized, and you can see as a kind of a ditch going through the woods there. But Neponset Valley Parkway itself must be 80 feet wide, or it's pretty wide. So it doesn't seem likely there would be 100 foot there. Where the river goes, you could see at the extreme east or left side of the design where the roads come together. There's a parking lot there, and the river itself is off the edge of the
I
block.
think
maybe
it's north though, right? It's northwest of this.
Right. There might be a little bit up in that corner, yes, and that looks like 300 or 400 feet away. So, I doubtful there's jurisdiction, but as you say, John, where we were that other time, maybe we were close. That would be on the bottom here.
That's here.
Where the entrance is there. You see the entrance in the middle?
Yep.
That's where the stone wall was monkeyed with, and we had a meeting. And I would just mention that a lot of good tree planting was done along there. They put in like 8 swamp white oaks, which are doing well. The gator bags were empty, but seemed they have plenty of water. They just did a nice job of planting along there. And that kind of helps with the planting that's already done. You see the S-shaped driveway separates the hospital from the fields. Those are really big trees along there. The ones on the bottom are all white pines. Up around the other curve, it's beeches and lindens. So there was some landscaping attention to this area going before anyone here was born, maybe, and that's a long time ago. I'm just guessing when those trees were planted.
Right. You know, it might be helpful, Steve Ivis, and for the others, Steve Ivis just did a base plan for 88 Milton Street, where we've got a CR that's almost ready to go after 10 years of negotiating with the state. But the base plan shows the ACEC, and I think it clips a part of this field area. I don't know that.
It's all of it.
What's
it's
that?
all of it, John. It goes all the way up to 138. Yes, it's. On the other hand, there's a lot that's already built in the ACEC.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah, the Wakefield Estate and everything on Avenue A. It's just a large area. So it's not, the ACEC doesn't mean you can't do projects.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
More complicated. Yeah.
It's just a level of review. That's all.
Yeah.
But Steve, you may have that right at your fingertip. You know, if so, you might want to send that to Ryan and Carolyn and Rob, etc.
Yes, I shall do that, Sean. Did you hear that?
I did.
We did.
Thank you.
Good.
I used to be a wetlands consultant, and I would have told my clients about this project that, yes, it is in ACEC. That means it has MIPA jurisdiction, as they call it. But I think you would escape further MIPA review quite quickly simply because the project is not on a scale that triggers further review. So you might have to file an ENF at most. I don't know. Maybe others could say what's likely, but I don't think it would be a real hurdle.
And Tom, this is Steve again. Furthermore, if you stand on Brush Hill Road, where the driveway is, and look south, I think you can see a wetland within 100 feet. Just for everybody to realize that I believe there may be a wetland, jurisdictional wetland, within 100 feet of that intersection with Brush Hill Road. That's all.
Right, Steve. That's where we had the joint meeting with the historic group.
That's
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's correct. Yep, just FYI for the folks who are consulting for the town.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Certainly.
And yeah, we'd have a file on that, and I think the wetlands were flagged for that.
Yes, I'm sure they were.
So, Philip, I don't know if you can find that file, and it'll be out of date because it's more than 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But it would give you certainly an idea of where the flags were. And again, that would be on the west side of Brush Hill Road.
I guess a part of my question, and I'm trying to think about process-wise what this looks like.
Yeah, me too. I was trying to take a step back because we're just finishing a master plan here, right? And so this is very conceptual in nature. And I just want to go back to John and maybe you can fill us in a little bit more because you said the next steps. I think from our process is like defining what those next steps are. I know you said a notice of intent. Can you just get a little bit more into the meat of that? Like if we are to move forward with this, what would we have to do in terms of like the next steps?
My suggestion would actually be to file an ANRAD to find the resource areas so that you can do that outside of having to have the MIPA discussion or just so an ANRAD is, you're just delineating the wetlands, identifying the resource areas, find out what's jurisdiction out there. That locks that in.
Even further, our goal here is not to sell services that wind up not helping the town. Our goal here is to provide services that actually move the ball forward. And while I'd love to send staff out to go delineate wetlands and understand resource areas and all of that, if we don't understand the continuing resolution and how we're defining structure,
there's kind of two issues here, and maybe they go hand in hand, right?
Is there a way to start that?
But maybe that's a second piece of this, right? But maybe you need that information, I guess, is what our question is back to the Concom is, do you want us to go that route? I think there's two issues here. One is the whole structural, what is a structure and like the mission of what this restrictions here, what's possible. And then the second thing here is like figuring out what that charge is for the Concom's, flagging where we are by wetlands and stuff like that. So I guess we're asking you is like what you need from us to advance the.
When I file a notice of intent, like we're much further along in the design process than we are right now. And I just don't want to spend that money if it turns out.
That's true. So I think Hans is correct that if you do the ANRAD, that's a simple, just resource area delineation. It'll tell us whether or not any part of the project is within 200 feet of the Neponset or 100 feet from the wetlands as I said, on the west side of Brush Hill Road. That's easy because that would trigger the need for a notice of intent. But if you're not within our jurisdictional area, then you don't have to file it. But
Then
we
it
have
just
another role.
goes.
We have a secondary role here, and that is to enforce the conservation restriction. That's different.
Right.
Yeah, you need to identify the resources regardless. But you wouldn't necessarily need to file an ANRAD. You can just make the decision based on that. I mean, you could probably just do it off mapping without having to, get people on the foot. But yeah, I think having a conversation with town council, understanding what flexibility we have in making an interpretation of the language in the CR. So to get a legal opinion, and obviously, John, you're qualified to do that yourself, but on someone that will break down the language in the CR kind of word by word to just give us the kind of not decision, but let us know where we have flexibility in interpreting what's in that language. Because when I read it, there is, towards the end of the CR, there is flexibility that's allowed by the Conservation Commission. There's also the historic work that's been done on the field that is, structures that shows that there's already been modifications to it. So I just don't want to step on our own feet and jump to conclusions if we don't have to.
So I'm not sure that answers your question, Rob.
No, and to be honest, I think I've spoken to a number of lawyers too. We've had some conversation with town council. I've had some conversation with John, and honestly, even the people here, I think it's very gray, is what I will say. It's very gray, the deed, and maybe too, Steve. To Steve's point is, do we need to, there is other Flatley members in town. Should we discuss with them before we go too far as well? Maybe that helps us define a little bit of this. I'm not sure. But it sounds like we need to do a little bit more homework on our end. And, John, maybe I can continue to speak with you as well, and we can kind of prod forward with town council. And maybe we set up a meeting or something with town council with a few of us, and then at least go down that one route. And then Ryan, you could help at least do the preliminary work to figure out how far away we are from wetlands and stuff. And it sounds like we have a plan of a number of things here that we need to investigate and then kind of regroup again, I think, so that we have an idea going forward before we get like too far in front of ourselves as well.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, we really appreciate the meeting and to discuss this with you. And we look forward to not being the last meeting as well, because I'm sure we'll be in front of you again soon.
All right. That's great. Any other comments, questions from Conservation Commission members? I don't see any hands. I hear anything.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have to have a motion to adjourn. Hans, did you make a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Seconded. Arthur, thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Aye. That's unanimous to adjourn from the conservation perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Appreciate
everybody's
it.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah.